FB live session. Today is a very much interesting topic that we all are having today. And today for that interesting session we have with us Miss Haritha Shyam, who is a Chief Dietitian at Apollo Hospitals, Jubilee Hills, Hyderabad. So, are you all aware about our today's topic, the ideal diet that we all wanted to follow in this 2020? I know many might be having New Year resolutions of losing weight, losing stress and all. So let's have a nice discussion about healthy diet that one needs to follow this New Year. Welcome ma'am, welcome to our FB live session.
Thank you Haritha. Both of us are Haritha.
So dear audience, any doubts that you have related to diet, and if at all you're planning to have diet resolutions in your New Year, so please leave those doubts in the comment section. We will be taking them one by one in the session, and we have received already a couple of questions from the audience. Even those we will be taking during the live session. So let's start, ma'am.
Yeah.
So every year people take resolution what to eat and what not to eat in the New Year. However, these resolutions are never fulfilled because they're a bit strict in nature. Can you suggest some meals which are easily available, tasty, and which will fulfill their appetite for a person?
Oh, that's a long order, Haritha. Let me begin by wishing all of you a very happy New Year. And I hope that all the resolutions that you're taking in this year will be successful. Diet does evolve over a period of time, and all of us individually understand that what resolutions which we had taken last year, if they have been those short-term resolutions, those extremely rigid diets, they have never really worked out or panned out throughout the year. So I think the one of the biggest resolution that we can take or make is that we begin to look at healthier alternatives. For every diet that I choose, whether is it at home or which I have it outside, I need to spend that half a minute, half a second to think whether this is good for me or not good for me. Based on this single parameter alone, which is a very self-evaluating parameter, you can decide whether that is going to aid you in your overall health, aid you in your weight loss plans, aid you in improving your overall health condition or not. Haritha asked me a question just now. It said, what is that single quick meal plan which I can select, or which is that ideal diet that I can follow? So if you look at the various diet patterns that are available in the market today, it is so very difficult to pick that one single ideal diet plan or a ideal meal plan. In fact, if I had to pick one of the best balanced diet examples, I would pick our Indian thali, which is a very, very good example of all the food groups being included in one single meal, and we are getting the right proportion of both the carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and all the good type of micronutrients that we are looking for. Now in our day-to-day life, we may not be able to have an elaborate thali meal per se, but definitely we can have a concised portion of it or a mini portion of it, so that we are getting the basic macronutrients and the micronutrients. So we might really cut off the sweets and the papads and the extra portion of vegetable or the special rice out of it, but the basic structure of really getting the rice there or the cereal there in forms of roti or a jawar roti or a millet roti that you will pick, and one type of vegetable, whatever seasonal vegetable you are having, one portion of protein, it could be coming from a vegetarian source or a non-vegetarian source, and a portion or cup of curd, which will give you both proteins and calcium, will be that mini meal which should be there day in, day out in your diet plan, to ensure that you are not only getting the basic macronutrients, but you are also getting the required micronutrients without bothering to really sit and calculate each one of them.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And ma'am, let's take our next question, ma'am. What portion of meal is ideal for a teenager, whether it is a 3 large meal or a 6 short meal?
Teenagers is a very difficult age, and you have a lot of food choices. Sometimes that they are not the right choices, and yet because of peer pressure you might land up having those more number of times than what you really want to have in the first place. Coming to the question whether 3 large meals are good or small frequent meals are good, teenage is a time when probably you're in college, you're getting in and out of classrooms, you are engaged throughout the day in terms of education, and must be having a very hectic and a busy schedule, and therefore it's very ideal to have meals every, let's say, every 3 hours. So that means you should never get out of your house without having your breakfast, because you really don't know when is your next break going to be. And if you do get breaks frequently, it's good to carry those short break meals. It could be a wrap, it could be a sandwich, it could be a fruit, it could be a nut, but something to eat in between your meals. So the basic 3 meals are definitely there, the breakfast, lunch and dinner, but in between you need to fuel yourself with the right kind of a food, so that you're not only getting those small frequent source of energy that you need to push yourself throughout the day, but you also need to keep yourself hydrated through the day. Now, hydrated does not mean caffeinated beverages, milkshakes, which are calorie dense, but hydrated through a more basic natural ingredients that we get. It could be simple water, it could be buttermilk, it could be coconut water. This will keep you well hydrated, give you that 2 to 3 liters of water per day, and will keep you on the right track in terms of good health, because the moment you're on good health, you're on the right track in terms of eating, you are putting in the maximum in terms of your efficiency, in terms of your output, and therefore you will be able to get the best results that you're looking for.
Thank you, ma'am. And we have received a question from an audience. Does very high fat and low carb diet help to cure diabetes?
Oh, so this is a very typical question that people would ask. To defend per se the carbohydrate intake, we must all remember that a minimum of 100 grams of carbohydrate is definitely required. We cannot and should not go lower than that. The brain does not get the glucose that it is looking for if we are going very low on our carbohydrate. In fact, if you look at an example of a good balanced meal, it has almost 50 to 60% of the calories coming from carbohydrates. So you definitely need carbohydrates in your diet. The whole point is the source of carbohydrate should not be coming from simple carbs like sugar, sweets, chocolates, ice creams. Those are the bad carbs. But if you're getting it from your fruit, you're getting it from the vegetable that you're eating, or the roti that you're eating, or the rice that you're eating, those are complex carbs, gives you a sustained release of energy, and should be part of your diet on a daily basis. Now, fat intake, if it is the good type of fat or the good source of fat, fairly good amount, about 30% of your calories can come from fat, but you need not and should not be reversing the percentage. So you can't do a very high fat and a very low carbohydrate diet simply to reverse diabetes. Most of the time when we see our intakes, they don't really confirm to that 55-60% that we are looking at, and they are much higher. And therefore, the advocacy of a low carbohydrate diet. The low does not mean bringing it down to much lower than 20-30%, which is both not practical on a long-term basis and also not healthy in the long-term basis.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And we have one more question. What will be an ideal diet for a diabetic and hypertension patients?
Yeah, so in line with what we are discussing right now, when you're looking at what is an ideal diet for a diabetic patient, one of the most important things is to take out all the simple sugars, which will immediately increase your blood sugar levels. So, anything that has sugar, whether it is a soft drink, whether it is a piece of cake or a laddu that you're having or a sweet that you're having, very clearly increases your blood sugar levels. Now, if this is very sporadic, once in a while, it is not a problem. But if it happens regularly, it will keep your blood sugars high for a long period of time. And in spite of medication, you will not be able to bring it down. So the ideal diet should be high in complex carbohydrates, which take longer to digest. Say for example, if you are choosing to eat maida versus wheat, why are we saying eat more of wheat flour rather than the refined maida? Because the maida has less amount of fiber, gets digested very quickly, spikes your post meal sugars very quickly. Versus if you're eating a whole wheat flour, it will take longer to digest because of the fiber content, and therefore the post meal sugars will not be as high as when you eat a simple easily digestible carbohydrate. And therefore the choice or ideal diet should always be that the carbohydrate source should be complex. It should have enough fiber in the diet. So we need about 25 to 30 grams of fiber in our daily diet. And unless you're eating your vegetables every day, unless you're eating 1 or 2 fruits every day, unless you're choosing to eat a lot of natural products, we do not get that kind of a fiber. So ensure that there is enough fiber in the diet and enough protein in a diabetic meal. Our Indian vegetarian diets are extremely low in protein, and therefore we must ensure or tailor our meal in such a manner that the breakfast has a protein, lunch has a protein, and the dinner also has a protein, so that throughout the day the release of blood sugar is slow, curtailed, moderate, and does not spike the postprandial sugar levels.
Thank you so much. And I'm taking a myth that is nowadays going around saying about this low carb diet, as you were just discussing also the same part.
Yeah.
Because nowadays there are many people in the public who all are suggesting various different types of diets, which one has totally zero calorie diet, one is totally zero carb diet and all. So is it ideal that the common people, even though they say and they show us many proofs of people losing weight or certain diseases have come into control because of the millets and all, so is that ideal for a common man to follow such diets which are not prescribed by a qualified person?
So let's understand this, that by eating millets or by shifting to eating from rice-based diet to a roti-based diet, or including a lot of protein in the diet, we are not cutting down the carbohydrates completely. We don't make it zero. We're just shifting the form of carbohydrates from a simple form to a more complex form, and therefore it is appropriate to do so. However, if we are cutting down completely the carbohydrate source, that means we are not eating rice, we are not eating the chapati at all in any of the meals, that would kind of figure and go to a very low carb diet. Now these low carb diets which give less than 100 grams or less than 50 grams of carbohydrates throughout the day are the ones which are detrimental to your health, and therefore should not be followed for long periods of time. If you want to look at the data, what WHO says or what ADA says, you will very clearly see that the end of it, they say 50 to 60% of your overall calorie intake really should come from carbohydrates, but the source should be complex. There should be a good 15 to 20% of the calories which should come from protein, and the rest 30% should come from fats. And we decide and we all know that we need to have the good type of fats. That means fats are necessary, but the good type of fats is what we need to look for. So we should look for fats which do not increase the HDL, the ones which which do not increase the LDL, which can have no effect on the HDL, because HDL is something that is impacted upon by our daily activity, being physically active and kind of specific activity that we can do, and which does not, and fats which do not have a raising power on their total cholesterol values, or that do not increase the body fat. So broadly, if we are able to have these breakups in mind, we are pretty much on the right path, and there is no need to deviate or take out one macronutrient from our diet in the pretext of being on a specific diet, or in the pretext of really trying to comply to a healthy diet pattern.
Thank you so much, ma'am. In continuation to that, I'll take the next question. What is the balanced diet of an adult should be in a single day? Means, as you were mentioning, the three main meals: the breakfast, the lunch, the dinner. So what are the portions and what are the elements that everybody should have on their plate in these three main meals?
So the typical answer for this is we should have the 5 food groups. It really depends upon what should I include in my meal, because there's thousands of varieties of food options available. But to filter it all down to the 5 basic food groups, that is, you should have a group which gives you some carbs. So that is the cereal group, whether you are having millets or wheat or rice will give you some amount of complex carbohydrates. Second is the fruit and vegetable group, which should be in the maximum amount or almost equal to the quantity of the cereals that you are having. The third is the protein group. So any food which gives us protein, it could be simple dals, it could be pulses, it could be milk, it could be curd, it could be paneer, it could be your eggs and non-veg, should be part of our daily meal. Similarly, some amount of curd, which is both a protein source, calcium source and a digestive, should be part of our meal. Whether to have sweets or not, whether to have fat or not, a very small portion of it, less than 10% of the total calories coming from the source of, in the form of sweets, can be included occasionally in our regular diet. If we know that these 5 basic food groups we are including in our diet, we are pretty much on the right track, and we need not sit and calculate on a daily basis whether, you know, I'm getting this nutrient or not, or that nutrient or not.
So are there any portions, ma'am, in that saying the protein should be this much of portion, carbohydrate should be this much of portion, the fiber content should be this much of portion, the liquids that we include, the juices or as part of the lunch or the pack for that meal, are there any portions?
So we wouldn't calculate based on the per meal.
Because in the Indian meal, we have rice, the larger portion, and the curries, the side dishes, they are very less portion. But all the studies and like you, all the doctors and the nutritionists are saying to reduce the rice content and increase the curry content. So I just wanted to clear that for all our audience.
Yeah, so exactly what you said, Haritha, that if you look at a typical meal, it will be a large portion of rice and a very little portion of vegetable. The dal may or may not exist, and especially if it's a working lunch, you just have the cereal and the vegetable and there is no dal, no curd, etc. Now that is half the appropriate meal that we would be having. You have to reverse these conditions. You have to try and include a lot of vegetable intake. It can be in the cooked form, but it should be in good sufficient quantity. So quantity wise, if somebody wants to know like how much vegetable should I have, I need to have at least one cup, about 100 grams of cooked vegetable for lunch, 100 grams of cooked vegetable for dinner. Over and above this, if I am managing to have at least 2 fruits per day, I would meet the fiber requirement per day. Similarly, protein. Do you have a quantification for protein? Absolutely. We all need to aim to get at least 1 gram of protein per kg, our ideal body weight. So let's say our ideal body weight is 60 kgs. Or your ideal body weight is say 70 kgs, you need to get that 60-70 grams of protein in and day out. And this will not only manage the diabetes, it will manage the weight, it will ensure that the muscle is maintained, and it will ensure in younger children and younger age group that growth and development is adequately taking place. So if you evaluate an Indian diet, we are way below the requirement. Where the requirements are about 60-70 grams, we are actually having only 30-40 grams of protein, and therefore all of us, especially when we are following a typical Indian diet, all of us need to look at each meal and see whether we are taking some amount of protein in the diet. So it could be coming from eggs, it could be coming from dal, it could be coming from milk, it could be coming from the simple curd that I have every day. Or if I like to eat non-vegetarian food, you should see whether at least twice a week, thrice a week, the lean meat is included in our daily diet. Then we are able to achieve that 60-70 grams per day. And I urge all of you to specifically look at the protein intake, because the moment we focus on protein, automatically our unnecessary carbohydrate intake will automatically come down.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'll take another interesting question. Recently, I would say from Mother's Day and Women's Day, a video on iron intake for women. It went viral.
Yes.
So please educate us about the iron. What is the good source of iron and the iron, the role that it plays on our body? Please.
Yeah, so I think this is a very important question, Haritha, because the video was made by FSACI, and the idea of making that video also was to educate women as to how important iron is in their daily diet. women tend to, look least into their diet and most into the family's diet. And that video was also meant to help her understand that if you keep healthy, you automatically are able to take care of your family better. And in terms of keeping yourself healthy, one of the most important things to look at is your hemoglobin levels and see whether you are falling into the category of being anemic. Why is it important for us to look at it? 50% of the Indian women fall in the category of anemia. I am surrounded with people who have low hemoglobin levels. We look at values like 10, 9, 7, and it's very scary because this is a very urban population. It's a well-educated population who have direct access to the right kind of food. They have the money buying power to buy whatever they want. Buy the healthy food, buy the high iron food, buy the medication and correct and get away with the problem in 3 months' time, and yet it is not getting corrected. It is simply because of the food choices that we are making. It's not because of lack of availability. It is simply because of the food choices that we are making, and therefore all the women folk out there, figure out whether you're having enough iron in your diet and vitamin C, because vitamin C helps in the iron absorption. So your good sources of iron come from nuts, it comes from green leafy vegetables. You can pack some dates and anjeer and kishmish in your bag every day if you're anemic. You try and include a lot of beetroot in your diet, whether you want to make a juice out of it, you want to include it as a vegetable, you want to take it up as a salad, whatever you choose. If you're a non-vegetarian, yes, non-vegetarian food has the good quality of heme iron, which is more easily absorbable in the diet, and therefore including that 2 to 3 times a week will aid, in addition to the medication that you're going to take, to bring up the iron levels far more quickly than using it randomly once in a while. Also, those who are non-vegetarians can look at taking liver, which is the highest source of iron in most foods which are available. Now, apart from taking iron, one also has to remember that again the diet has to be well balanced. We have to ensure that there's a lot of protein in the diet, because protein takes the iron molecule inside, and we can also ensure that a lot of vitamin C is there in the diet. So vitamin C enhances the iron absorption in the given diet that you're already taking. That means if you just added vitamin C rich foods in the diet, your hemoglobin levels could actually improve. So this is the best season to get vitamin C. You're getting your amla, which is the best source of vitamin C. You can juice it, you can make a sweet out of it, you can put it in your salad, you can put it in your chutney, put it in the dal, put it in the pulihora, whichever way you want to consume it. You make sure that the plenty of guavas that are available all over the place are definitely figuring on your table. You put it on your workplace per se, because once you go home, your focus is family. Similarly, oranges are its source, tomatoes are its source of vitamin C. Either you drink the juice or you eat the fruit. Of course, the encouragement is to eat the fruit, but if you've not had the time, please go ahead and have the juice, so that the iron that you're taking, both in the form of medication and in the form of diet, is better absorbed and better assimilated in the diet. So I think women can look at one of the primary focus is, correct your iron intake, have a quick check whether these foods are there in your diet. If not, try and include 1, 2 or 3 of these in your daily diet.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I have a myth, one of the myth question, and even the similar one of our audience has also asked just now. What is the reason for increasing of the thyroid problems nowadays? Is it because of the iodized salt or the not iodized salt? Because her question is reason for increasing thyroid problems even though we are using iodized salt. So
yeah.
My question is, because of this refined salt, even though they say it is iodized salt, but when it is refined, I think, does the iodine consistency in the salt is lost?
No, not at all. See, if you look at statistics, the incidence of goiter had been very high, and therefore the government made it a law that all salt which is available in the market today in India has to be iodized. So iodine is not naturally present to the extent that it should be present, and therefore the government is using salt as a vehicle, because that is a must have ingredient for all of us. It is using that as a vehicle to iodize or provide the iodine, because we may not be eating all the iodine rich foods. So there is, as you rightly said, a myth whether to eat a rock salt or to eat some advertised salt, or to use the regular iodized salt that we are getting in the market. So please go ahead and eat your iodized salt, because that is being done specifically to ensure that we are getting our baseline minimum dose of iodine that we need. One. Second question is also about the thyroid. Why the thyroid values are increasing, and why every second person is getting diagnosed.
We are consuming the iodized salt, because
Yeah.
thyroid is suppressed with iodine.
Yeah, so but because we eat iodine, iodized salt, does not mean that my thyroid is going to be very, very active. It depends on a lot of other factors. It depends upon my physical activity, it depends upon the amount of weight that I am gaining, my overall hormonal function that is happening, and a lot of environmental factors. What we can do, what is within our hands, is to ensure that my weight is as per my height. If my weight is appropriate for my height, my thyroid gland, which is producing that particular hormone, will be sufficient for that body type, and will be sufficient for that body weight. Only in case when the amount of thyroid is not sufficient for that body weight, then we see that the hyperactive thyroid gland which is coming into play. And also certain deficiencies of nutrients like B12 deficiency, vitamin D deficiency also trigger this condition. So make sure, and therefore so much emphasis on all the micronutrients. Do you know what your vitamin D levels are? Do you know whether you are B12 deficient? So many of us are so many of us are fatigued and tired and exhausted at the end of the day, even if we are not doing any kind of a hard physical activity. Why do you think that is there? You need to then look at your B12 values. This is a universally low nutrient. Vitamin D, if your vitamin D is very low, you tend to be irritable, depressed, tired, you have a lot of leg cramps, bone pains, etc., which are unexplained. And unless we focus on these individual micronutrients, we are not going to have the good health in brackets that we are looking for. Even though you may be a physically very active person, or you are running around and able to accomplish a lot in terms of family, work, personal goals, etc. So look at these small nutrients. They may be deficient over a long period of time, which could be causing the thyroid gland to be inactive. Also, weight is a big trigger. Higher the weight, lesser is going to be the amount of hormone that is available, and simple weight reduction could actually correct this problem.
Thank you so much, ma'am. As you were talking about the weight calculation depending on the height and the weight, so please tell us something about the BMI.
Right. So while all of us would want to know, whether my weight is appropriate for my height, for this you don't need to, really visit anybody, or you don't need to look up the internet. All that you need to do is, check your weight in kilograms and measure and divide it by height in meter square. You will get a value which is called the body mass index. This tells you that for your height, whether you're in the right range or not. That means if you're getting a value anywhere between 18 to 25, that is the normal range of BMI, and once you fall below 25 BMI, you are in the right weight category for your height. Let's say you are between 25 to 29, that means you come in the overweight category. But anything about 30, 32, 35, that all gets categorized as obesity, and that's when the disease starts kicking in, or you see it very evidently, and that depends upon the weak link that you have genetically. If you have a obesity weak link, that shows faster. If you have a diabetic weak link, if you have a cardiac weak link, if you have a thyroid weak link, all that shows simply depending on the weight that we are having. And therefore, since it's the foundation, so much emphasis, education and awareness being spread around being available, being at the right weight for your height.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So as part of our session itself, the New Year resolution, what should be the diet of a person who wants to lose weight?
In the new year, is it? I think this is a year-long resolution that all of us have, that we are constantly wanting to lose weight. But let's have a more realistic goal. Let's not think of losing 5 to 10 kgs in 2 months' time and then being at that weight, because weight maintenance is far more difficult than actually losing weight. So be practical, lose about 2 to 3 kgs per month and keep it consistent, both with a moderate dietary plan and good physical activity. Of the 24 hours, dedicate that 1 hour 40 minutes for physical activity, and at the turn of the year, not in a month or two, but at the turn of the year, you will definitely see that you are slimmer, healthier, and weigh far more less than what you were the previous year.
Don't forget to hydrate yourself, as Madam was mentioning earlier.
Yeah, so ensure that hydrating is the most important thing, in addition to picking the right kind of food. We all forget to drink that minimum 2 to 3 liters of fluids that we need every day. So whether you're getting it from plain water, you want to add some detox water, add some cucumber, your mint, your kothmir into it. You want to add some slices of fruit juices into it. So I'm not talking here about actually taking a fruit juice, because many fruit juices could be laden with sugars and could be extremely low in the fiber intake. Rather, consuming regular home-based liquids like buttermilks, coconut water, barley water, or a lemon barley, or a ginger ale, which you could make and take it and keep it at your desk and keep sipping on it throughout the day to ensure that you're getting your 2 to 3 liters per day.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And so, dear audience, I hope all your doubts are clarified. We have covered many of them in that, but if at all you still have any doubts, we have left Ms. Haritha Shyam's Ask Apollo profile link in the text box, wherein you can click in and book an appointment. You can even consult her online as well, even though you're not in Hyderabad. So it is very much easy to access her online. And thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today and educating us about a healthy diet plan for the coming year 2020. And dear audience, thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned. Many more such educative lives are coming up. Thank you.
Thank you.